this stream thing over and over again. Again, welcome. I'm Dr. Jack Stockwell. For those of you who are listening through the stream, welcome this morning. And this Facebook is, or boy, I always say Facebook. I mean YouTube. I'm not on Facebook, not yet, maybe eventually, but not yet. Primarily YouTube and X. And I had all these thoughts. You know how sometimes early in the morning, especially when I'm in the shower, just all these thoughts start running through my mind about how I want to do this. And I am really fascinated with the professionalism that Dr. Judge Napolitano does all week long with a multitude of guests, nothing going more than 30 minutes long. You know, maybe there's an exception to that, but almost invariably, it's just a few minutes of good content that you can listen to, and if it holds on to your attention, you can listen to it 20 to 30 minutes, going to work, coming home from work, taking kids to school, shopping, whatever else you're doing, running around during the day, especially if your job involves driving. I think that's what I'm going to do. And I was able to section certain portions of time during the week when this would be perfect for both political and health topics. Like the first thing I want to talk to you about several things today, definitely fats, because I want to celebrate the fact that Steak and Shake, if you've ever been back east, there's Steak and Shakes in Vegas and California, but mostly it's Midwest, across to the east and down into Florida. There's probably as many Steak and Shakes in Florida as there are 7-Elevens. They're getting rid of the seed oils. They must have been listening to this show. They're getting rid of the seed oils and going back to beef tallow. And so I am really excited about that. This is if I'm going to go out and buy wild wings, chicken wings, that's why I like going to Buffalo Wild Wings, because they fry their wings in beef tallow. They always have, which is far, far more healthy than these seed oils. And I think with Steak and Shake doing this, and what they will be attracting to their restaurants because of that, I think other stores are going to start getting in line as well. And I have a few to go over with you, some of the major ones that people eat from on an almost weekly basis, just crammed with seed oils. And I submit to you, that's probably the #1 cause of heart disease. Ever since 100 years ago, up to about the 1950s, when it really accelerated, getting rid of animal fats and supplanting them with vegetable seed oils. They're not vegetables. Seed oils do not come from vegetables, even though we call it vegetable oil. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about, and introducing that, why butter is far better than margarine. And then a letter was written by Sally Fallon Morell to President Vladimir Putin last fall, after a comment that Vladimir Putin made regarding giving the Mother Heroine Award for women in Russia that bear 10 or more children. And a letter that she wrote him that he might want to keep in mind. All right, something's going on at K-Talk, and I need to get that done. All right. All right. Oh, the news. Of course, the news. All right, for those of you listening at K-Talk, you have my profound apology. There is a way to get around this. There's a way for me to actually sound like a professional doing these programs. And that's what I think I'm going to do. I think I want to really make this a lot easier and save a lot of time on my part. I love doing this. I want to do more of it. Just going to sleep last night, I thought of a couple of things that happened yesterday politically in the country that I would love to spend 15 or 20 minutes talking about. that involve various areas of the planet, not just our country, that I think are important to understand and to pass around. I guess there's a certain level of ego in this. I guess you got to have a certain level of ego, the id driving this stuff. But I feel like as I see the health of so many people that I take care of in my clinic, people I've been taking care of for 2 decades. I don't see them very often. I might see them every year, maybe once a year, maybe every 2 years I'll see them. And it's just sad. It's just sad to see these kinds of things taking so much away from these people. So I want to be talking about fats, and then I'm going to talk about a question I was asked about olive oil. How do you know if you have a good olive oil or not? And then an interesting mandate that came out from the FDA regarding a warning of nerve damage with RSV and the V word that goes with that. I need to be careful of this with YouTube. And I want to talk about that if I've got time, so I think we'll just plow into this. But I wanted to start off, I'm going to say something now, and I'm going to say at the beginning of the next hour when there's a larger audience. And that, of course, would be probably the biggest complaint I get during holidays is indigestion. So I'm going to tell you something here for just a few minutes on if you can tell whether you got good, strong digestion or not. We know scientifically that after the age of 35, you begin to lose digestive strength in the stomach with your stomach acids as well as the protein digesting enzymes. And so there's something called the baking soda burp test. Some of you may be familiar with this because we talk about this in the clinic to some patients. But I have a podcast at ForbiddenDoctor.com under education called Digestion, the Beginning and the End of Life, which I think only makes sense. And all the money and the time that you spend on shopping for really good food and eating really good food may be going to waste to some degree if your digestive system is not functioning at the level that it should. It's one thing to put good organic vegetables and good grass-pastured beef and eggs and whatever else into the gut. But if you don't have the intrinsic tools, such as strong acids and strong enzymes to break them down, a lot of it's going to go through undigested and you're going to be wasting money. So stomach acid is the first line of defense that we have regarding the various pathogens, viruses, bacteria, molds, parasites, whatever might be present in food, which is why I tell people who are concerned about eating sushi and then the possibility of parasites, yeah, there's parasites in sushi. There's parasites in everything. You can't get away from these things any more than you can get away from viruses or bacteria. The thing is to have a strong defense that destroys them once they get into the digestive system, and your first line of defense is very strong stomach acid. And very common bacteria can proliferate inside the stomach if it's a nice, warm, cozy home for these bacteria. You get rid of them by having very strong acid. And when you have low acid, and this is the primary cause of heartburn, is you don't have enough acid. Not that you have too much. You don't have enough. That can lead to GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, or just basic old heartburn and acid reflux. When you eat food, you have to eat a certain amount to trigger digestion anyway. If you just take a few supplements in the morning, like I took the supplements for my prostate and my heart this morning, that's such a lightweight thing with water to drink them down. That's not going to trigger digestion. You've got to have a good 3 or 4 ounces of something in there to actually trigger digestion. And when you do, the body's supposed to be releasing acids, the stomach anyway. And if there is some dense protein, such as you would have with meat, or a large enough content, the stomach acid will take the pH of the contents down to 2 or less, down to the area of battery acid, and then your body will release pepsin from the stomach wall that destroys collagen, which is another indicator Mother Nature intended for us to eat meat, because the pepsin that is released from the stomach wall when the stomach gets acidy enough is designed to do one thing and one thing only, and that's to digest collagen, which is the fibers that are holding the meat protein together. That's a subject for another show, but low stomach acid is usually the cause of acid reflux and indigestion, because the pyloric valve at the bottom of your stomach is not going to release the contents of the stomach until it's sufficiently acidified. Then it goes into a buffering with sodium bicarbonate that your body makes to buffer that acid, and then it's hit by the proteolytic enzymes, primarily trypsin and chymotrypsin, coming out, and pancreatin, coming out of the pancreas to further the digestion before it gets into the full length of the small intestine. Now, when the stomach isn't acidified enough, the contents, it just sits there. And when it sits there, it ferments. And when it ferments, it produces gas, mostly carbon dioxide. That's where the burping comes from. And the problem is these acids, these weak acids that your body has produced, will mutate a little. Mutate's not really, they change their structure a little bit. And they start forming acids that don't belong in the stomach. And because of the gas that's forming, because it's sitting there too long, not moving into the small intestine, it's like a volcano. It starts blowing these acids up your throat. And that's where the acid indigestion comes from. Where on the other hand, if you had sufficient levels of acid in the stomach, within a matter of an hour or two, the stuff is going to be broken down to the point where it can move into the small intestine and leave the stomach empty. Now, there is a trick to determine whether or not a trick, there's a test you can do that determines whether or not your stomach acid is strong enough. And what you do, and you do it first thing in the morning before you have anything really to eat or drink, you take a glass of water, about 6 to 8 ounces of water, and 1/4 of a teaspoon of sodium bicarbonate, baking soda. And you drink the solution, and then you got your little timer there in your hand or wherever else, and you start watching how long it takes you to burp. And if you burp in less than, oh my goodness, if you burp in less than 2 minutes, you've got good, strong stomach acid. And those of you who are listening on air at K-Talk, my profound apologies. In everything else that I'm trying to do here, I have failed to turn on the microphone. I have been giving the baking soda burp test. I'm going to do it again at the beginning of the next hour. My deepest apologies. I'm trying to do too much at one time, and as I said, I've been able to figure out how to break this into smaller pieces and quit worrying about the early morning rush. So if after you take this 1/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda and 6 to 8 ounces of water, if you burp in less than 2 minutes or up to 2 minutes, you've got strong stomach acid, you're fine. If it takes 2 to 5 minutes, it might be normal, but the longer you go past 2 minutes, indication of low stomach acid. If it takes longer than 5 minutes for you to burp, or you don't burp at all, you've got very low stomach acid. Because the baking soda, the sodium bicarbonate, reacts with the acid in the stomach to release carbon dioxide. And if the acid is strong enough, you're going to release that carbon dioxide pretty fast, and you should burp in less than 2 minutes. Whether it's low or big burp doesn't matter. You should be burping. And it's a very simple at-home test. There's no side effects. But it's a good indication, very easy to do for anybody in the family. And remember, the older we get, the less acid we make anyway. So you got to do something about it. And this is one of the most popular supplements that we sell at the clinic, Zypan. I was talking to a patient yesterday who only takes one Zypan following a meal, just a little tiny pill. I should be holding up a bottle of it so you can see what it looks like. You can go to forbiddendoctor.com under standard process products and Google Zypan, or not, search Zypan, not Google. and you'll see what it looks like. And it's a product that increases the acidity of the stomach. Plus, it has other digestive enzymes along there with it. Plus, things in there that help to retrain the stomach to produce the acids that it should be producing. Now, he said he only took one, and he didn't think he was getting enough because his stomach, the digestion wasn't complete. And I said, well, I'll tell you what I do. I mean, at 74 years old, I've been taking Zypan since I first discovered it over 20 years ago. I'll take about 4 of them, depending on how much I eat. Now, if all you're eating is fruit, you don't need it. But if you eat anything else that also includes fruit, then you've got to have something to help break down those proteins, or you're going to have some kind of indigestion, or even if you don't have indigestion, you are not getting the full nutritive value of that food unless it's broken down completely. Now, I've often compared the human digestive system to an assembly line plant, where you see the pictures. Let me get the microphone here a little closer. Paul, maybe this will help. You see the pictures of Henry Ford's assembly line that he introduced for the manufacturing of his Model T Ford. And, thousands upon thousands of pieces that are involved. The modern automobile today can have over 10,000, including the washers. They go with the nuts and the screws. Paul, I don't know what to tell you, that this is the lowest volume you've ever heard. And I think you're talking about the radio station. I'm set up here the way I normally do. You hear the Zoom ringing loud and clear, but Zoom, I think you mean the stream. I'm streaming with StreamYard, not Zoom. But so it's something with the radio station. I don't know if the volume slide was affected last night or late afternoon or something. The pot that controls volume there on the base and the radio station might be low. I don't know. There's nothing I can do at this point except shout, and I'm not going to do that. So anyway, as I go on here, I'll take, if I have, and I've been eating a lot more meat lately. I've had a couple of pieces of fruit lately because my mother sent me my Christmas present from Florida of Florida fresh picked navel oranges right off the tree, put into a box and shipped that afternoon, that just arrived a couple days ago. My goodness, it's almost like eating candy. Paul, I see your note there. You've had several listeners as well tell you the same thing. This is why we need to move the K-Talk audience to stream, to either X or YouTube, both of which is coming through now. Now, if you're listening through K-Talk radio, well, I got the microphone a little closer to my mouth. That's probably why. If you're listening on AM 1640, or you're listening to the stream associated with the radio show, if at YouTube, you would just at Dr. Jack Stockwell, all one word, at Dr. Jack Stockwell. No, excuse me. That would be, at YouTube. You go to youtube.com/at Jack Stockwell, and you can see the stream and uninterrupted content. At X, I think it's Forbidden Doctor, at Forbidden Doctor. I'm supposed to know this stuff. All right, back to the stomach. And I will give the baking soda burp test again at the beginning of the next hour, just so you can test to see how strong your stomach acids are. So over the years, over the 20 years or more that I have been using Zypan, I have increased the dose to where if I have a good portion of meat, I haven't, like I said, I had some fruit recently from fresh picked navel oranges in Florida. Nothing else. I can't think of any other fruit I've had since the holidays, and hardly any vegetables whatsoever. I am currently following what I call the lion diet: salt, meat, and water. Yeah, I know, it's kind of bizarre. I'm kind of a bizarre character, but man, do I feel good. No stiffness. I jumped out of bed this morning, just fully, no joint pain, no muscle stiffness, clear-headed, energetic, feeling great. And what did I have yesterday? I had lamb. I had an Indian curried lamb. So there's some curry and some tomato sauce in that curry, of course. So there are some vegetables there, but not much. Mostly lamb. And it's the only thing I ate. I didn't have any dinner last night because I wasn't hungry. But at the end of that meal yesterday, I took 4 Zypan and 2 Colocol. Colocol to break down the fats. Because sometimes if the older we get, the less digestive enzymes and acid we have, but well, the less bile we have as well, because the standard American diet has a way of turning your bile into honey when it should flow like water. That's why we use something called beta food, B-E-T-A food. Beta food thins the bile, has saved so many gallbladder problems and prevented a lot of gallbladder surgery. In fact, there's a gallbladder surgeon specialist in Manhattan who hasn't performed a gallbladder surgery, the last I heard, in over 10 years, because he puts all his gallbladder patients on beta food. Once you thin that bile and you can clean out the stones, yes, clean out the stones, and be able to have perfect breakdown of the fats. So yesterday and I kind of stuffed myself because it was the only meal of the day. I didn't have any breakfast. I waited till lunch. I had a lot of lamb and curry and no dinner last night, but I had 4 Zypans and 2 Colocols. Sailed through the afternoon, got home, no digestive upset or whatsoever. And the way I can judge myself as to whether or not I went to bed with my liver cleansing my blood and not digesting food because I ate too late is when I dream. And man, last night I just dreamt and dreamt and dreamt. Kind of crazy, silly type dreams. I'm still looking for, for a dream to show me where, the Rhodes mine is hidden up in the Uintas. But it hasn't happened yet. But in the meantime, I dreamt like crazy last night. I got out of bed, no joint pain, no muscle tightness, no nothing. So that's why I'm talking about this, because this is a time of the year when people simply are overeating the wrong stuff. And what do I mean by the wrong stuff? Well, I want to celebrate. One thing I wanted to say in regards to one of President Trump's executive orders, pulling out of the World Health Organization. Holy smoke, the damage that organization has caused to the health profile of this world and the number of deaths that are behind it. When he was signing this, and this is not political, this is a health thing with a political bent, but I'm going to get into a chain store across the country that I want to celebrate because they're moving to tallow instead of seed oils to fry their foods. He said that the U.S. has paid $500 million to the World Health Organization. He said China pays far less than that. And he said that China, with 1.4 billion people, paid $39 million to the World Health Organization, where the United States, with 325 million, paid $500 million. Says terribly unfair. I don't look at numbers like that in the first place. I look at the fact, is the World Health Organization something worth supporting? On Biden's first day in office, of course, he retracted a decision by the Trump administration to withdraw from the World Health Organization that Trump wanted to do at the end of his first administration. So one of his chief actions that he took place through his executive orders was to get out of the WHO. Congratulations, President Biden. I definitely, while I have some concerns about others that I'll discuss in political context, I congratulate you for that one. So Steak and Shake. I started off talking the program this morning about Steak and Shake. There's a lot of them around the country. There's a couple of them in Las Vegas. There's some in California, mostly in the Midwest, spreading over to the East Coast, and a lot of them down in Florida. And what they're doing is they announced Thursday of last week that it's going to be cooking their shoestring fries in 100% beef tallow by the end of February 2025. So that's merely 6 weeks away. He said, Chris Ward, who's the chief supply chain officer for Steak and Shake, said, our fries will now be cooked in the authentic way. 100% beef tallow in order to achieve the highest quality and best taste. By the end of February, all Steak and Shake restaurants will have shifted to frying in vegetable oil to frying in 100% all-natural beef tallow. It's interesting he called it vegetable oil. Remember, these seed oils are not vegetables. They're beans. Soybean, canola. So, well, canola is not a bean, but it's not a vegetable. So the consumer wants the best and deserves the best, says the global develop officer for Steak and Shake. She said it's going to be able to deliver the best fries possible. Now, of course, this is all hype on the part of the company. But they said that by the end of February, Steak and Shake will use 100% beef tallow, no cap. Now, no cap is from back east, a slang for no lie. It means real. No cap, real. So the chain followed another post that they said, by the end of February 2025, all locations will use 100% all-natural beef tallow. If vegetable oil broke your heart, our tallow will make you fall in love again. Now, beef tallow is the fat that surrounds a cow's kidney. Suet. We know it as suet, pig or cow. The fat that is around the beef kidney and the pork kidney is actually the most nutritious fat that's in the animal. Now, one of the, and something I want to say here as an aside, because it just came to my memory, in gross anatomy back in college where we're dissecting human cadavers, and most of the cadavers that come in from, and it depends on state to state what their laws are, but people who, and I don't want to use the term street people or homeless people or something like that out of context, but people who die on the street, people who die in shelters with no identification, no way of contacting next of kin, completely unknown, or if there is some ID and they run it down, they cannot find next of kin. Depending on the state is required to keep them in cold storage at the morgue 30 days, 60 days before they can be released to medical schools, chiropractic colleges, osteopathic colleges, whatever, and anybody else that would be using cadavers. They're just released to them. Now, when you consider the fact that a lot of these people are just simply unknowns with no next of kin, they aren't grossly obese people. They're just the opposite. They're emaciated in many cases. I helped with the preparation of some cadavers that arrived in the gross lab at Palmer when I was there. And I wasn't officially a lab tech, but I was in there doing lab tech work just because I wanted to be more familiar with the next section on the tests to be able to identify the tiniest little nerve structures inside the body. And I was amazed at these emaciated bodies, how much fat there was inside of them surrounding the organs. The heart is wrapped in fat, the liver wrapped in fat, and the kidneys wrapped in very thick fat. And one person that I made a comment about said, yeah, that's to keep the organ warm. Well, it made sense at the time, but there's something much more important than that. Because the blood flowing through the organs will keep the organs warm provided the body is healthy. The body surrounds organs with fat because there's much more nutrition in that fat than in, say, belly fat, so that the organ will always have a food supply, even in the most desperate of conditions. So people who fast for a long period of time, how do they keep their organs working? Without the right kind of fat, protein, and carbohydrate in the sense of glucose formation, whether it's the body's making the glucose or whatever. Where are they getting the raw materials? Where's the body getting the raw materials to do this? Because it's not coming in the water that they drink while they're fasting. And I'm talking about prolonged fast. Well, the organs are surrounded with a different kind of fat, as I said, than you have in belly fat. And these fats are loaded with nutrition. It's the same thing when someone was asking me the other day, when I was telling them, well, they said, do I have to take these supplements? I said, no, just eat better. You don't have to take supplements if you'll eat better. The supplements are a fallback because you don't eat correctly. So, well, what would I do to eat better? You know, and I've simplified it. I want you to eat 4 ounces of liver twice a week. If you'll do that, you don't have to take that stuff for the heart. Well, I hate liver. Okay, take the pills. It's that simple. Well, liver, you know, these animals that get these shots and these herbicides and pesticides and hormones and the antibiotics, and it's not stored in the liver. Surprise? The body keeps the liver clean so that it can clean the blood to keep the body alive. Most of those toxins that are in the fat is in the fat that's distributed throughout the rest of the body. The liver really doesn't have a whole lot of toxins in it. If it did, you'd die. Now think about that for a minute. The primary blood filter of the system, the liver, has got to be clean itself, or you're not going to have clean blood. Now, you can get to the point where the toxicities in the body build up so heavy that the liver, your last backup, finally starts to become somewhat toxic. But your body will beg, borrow, and steal and do everything it possibly can to keep your blood clean, and it's the liver's job to do that, which is why you can be suffering from some rather serious diseases, but your blood tests look good. And so some people who don't understand the relationship kind of shrug their shoulders and say, well, I don't know. You got a couple of markers for what you have, but obviously in this disabling condition you're in, you're suffering from such and such a disease, but your blood looks good. You know, your liver enzymes are a little high, your heart enzymes could be better, but your minerals look good, your kidney output looks good, because the body will do whatever it can to keep that blood clean. And one of the ways it keeps the blood clean is it keeps the liver clean. So these toxicities that we think is in liver, even commercially processed beef, the liver is not as toxic as some people would have you think it is. Boy, did I ever get out in the weeds. I just want you to understand that's the standard answer I give to people when they come to me and well, I want to do the heart scan. Okay, let's do the heart scan. I love doing the heart scan. And because it's going to tell me how that heart's functioning in real time. And the heart sound recorder is what we call it. And it's surprising. Some patients are absolutely surprised when they see how weak their heart contraction is, even though they can go up and down the stairs without lightheadedness or weakness or faint or chest pain. And I said, well, it's coming. You notice the number, the people who are more prone to heart attacks are people who are over the age of 45, as opposed to people under 45, although, of course, there is an increasing number of teenagers and people in their 20s with heart attacks, but that's another story. The older you get with a less than optimal diet, the more organs in your body are going to be robbed of the nutrition that they need to keep them functioning correctly. And there are tests that can be done that will show, you know, just with the GFR, the glomerular flow rate will tell us how your kidneys are functioning. There are kidney enzymes and there's kidney markers and other things that take place in a blood test that indicate kidney function. But just the GFR, if it goes below 60, we know you're going to have kidney problems. When we do a heart sound recorder on somebody, I can see right there in the strength of the signal of the lub-dub, lub-dub, lub, whether you're headed for trouble or not. I'm not a cardiologist, but you don't have to be a cardiologist. If you're listening with a stethoscope and you hear murmurs, you know there's a problem. And when you're looking at the heart sound recorder and there's weakness in contraction, there's a problem. And we've done this on some younger people who are flat out surprised because they think you don't have a heart problem until you have a heart attack. No, you have a growing heart problem that finally shows up as a heart attack. So I tell them, well, this is what I want you to take. This is what you need to take. We're going to retest you in 30 days. I guarantee you, you're going to see a stronger heart as a result of doing this. Well, I have to take all those pills. No, just eat liver. See the cycle I get into? And it's not just that I do this here talking to you guys, because I love you guys and I'm concerned about your heart. But the number one cause of heart disease in this country is malnutrition. The second one is these damn seed oils, which I started off talking about. Now I got onto these other subjects. So anyway, congratulations to Steak and Shake for moving in this direction. They have 436 locations throughout the United States. And 3 days before the announcement, Steak and Shake put out a poll to those who were in their email list. How do you feel about cooking fries in 100% beef tallow? More than 90% responded with yes. Now, it's unclear how long the poll was open, but people are getting the idea. Now, before I heard Mercola talking about seed oils, before I heard McCullough talking about seed oils, before I heard Gundry talking about seed oils, I was talking about seed oils 20 years ago on the health shows that I was presenting at K-Talk. The chain is primarily in the South and Midwest, founded in 1934, known for their steak burgers. But of course, in recent years, seed oils is becoming a real topic of controversy. And last October, Robert F. Kennedy was lambasting, I should have said, and before Robert F. Kennedy was talking about seed oils, I was talking about them. I was country before country was cool, as they say. He wants people to go back to beef tallow. He wants the chain restaurants in this country to go back to beef tallow. He said this, October 21 last fall. Did you know that McDonald's used to use beef tallow to make their fries from 1940 until phasing it out in favor of seed oils in 1990? The switch was made because saturated animal fats were thought to be unhealthy, but we have since discovered that seed oils are one of the driving causes of the obesity epidemic. Obesity rates began to, this is Kennedy, began to drastically rise around the same time fast food restaurants switched from beef tallow to seed oils in their fryers. People who enjoy a burger with fries on a night out aren't to blame. An American should have every right to eat at a restaurant without being unknowingly poisoned by heavily subsidized seed oils. He says it's time to make frying oil tallow again. Now, heavily subsidized seed oils. Now, I've done shows on this in the past. What happened to all the tobacco farmers? Well, all right. Now, because of government suppression of tobacco, higher taxes and everything else, a lot of tobacco farmers went out of business. What are you going to do? You know, they can't go to the poorhouse. All right, we want you to grow soybeans. Soybeans? Why do we want to grow soybeans? Because we can get oil out of them and push it off on the public as something healthy, and we're going to have an advertising program you can't believe to show how horrible these animal fats are that mankind has eaten for tens of thousands and thousands of years without heart disease. Remember, heart disease has only been around a little over 100 years. I don't have time to get into that again, but if you've heard me talk about this, you know that heart disease was almost unheard of before 1910, about the time we started eating white bread instead of wheat bread. And then when they took butter out of the diet and put margarine in there, then heart disease just took off like crazy, as well as obesity. But again, that's for another show. So they go to the farmers and they say, well, you can't grow tobacco now. We're going to grow seed oils, and we'll pay you for it. We'll subsidize it. Yeah, you can't make as much money growing soybeans as you can tobacco, so we will subsidize you. The federal government pays genetically modified corn growers to grow genetically modified corn and to grow glyphosate-laden soybeans are subsidized with your tax dollars as well. Hopefully, Kennedy can start straightening this stuff up. Now, back to the fat that is wrapped around the kidneys. Suet is what it's called. Layer oil or layer fat. I think it might be leaf. Leaf. It's also called leaf fat. If you can get your hands on that and render your own tallow, which is easy to do, you can do it in a crock pot. There are several, I don't know how many, as I was reviewing this, how many videos exist at YouTube on how to render tallow from beef fat. It looks so, some of the ones I was looking at look so easy. I was thinking about doing it myself. Now, this is where the fat part comes in as to if you're going to make your own tallow, and tallow is good for the skin. There's all, they use tallow, they used to use tallow. I don't know if they do so much anymore, probably. But even grease for machinery and for skin care products and soap and candles and a bunch of other things that our ancestors used these things for. It's making a comeback, happily a comeback. And if you decide to do this, I'm a pretty crazy, bizarre type of character, and I don't know that I'm that crazy to make my own tallow, because you can buy it in the store. Read the labels, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes, especially when I get to olive oil. If you're going to do that, you want to get the leaf fat. You want the suet fat. You can go to the butcher in your grocery store or some other butcher shop around town. You don't want the body fat unless it's grass-pastured beef, because as I said earlier here a few minutes ago, that's where the toxins build up in the body fat. But the leaf fat, the fat that surrounds the heart, that surrounds the kidneys, is usually pretty good fat. You can make your own tallow out of that. I don't know. We eat ourselves to health and we eat ourselves to death. And this unknowingly poisoning of American public by the seed oil industry has finally got to come to an end. Which brings me to my next subject. And that is, back in 2019, Mercola did an article on lard, rated as one of the top 10 healthiest foods. I've often talked about La Hacienda restaurant in Draper. La Hacienda makes their tortillas with lard. That's why their tortillas are so delicious. I remember in 1964, the summer of 64, I was 13, getting ready to go into the 9th grade. And not too far from where we lived, they opened the first local McDonald's. And I remember going there with my father, who wanted to know why I thought Simon and Garfunkel was so good. Because that was probably one of my first albums that I had as a teenager, besides a couple of Beatles. was a Simon and Garfunkel. I think it was the Sound of Silence album, although they had a couple before that. And while we were talking about it, he pulls into a McDonald's. And I had seen the McDonald's commercials on TV prior to this, because even though McDonald's and Wendy's and Burger King and all the rest of them are the staple of American diet, back then it was just kind of like a brand new thing, like Kentucky Fried Chicken when it first showed up, cooking chicken in tallow, back when it tasted incredible. So he pulls in the TV commercial. To remember this day, the jingle's still in my head, 47 cents for a 3-course meal at McDonald's. A small Coke, French fries, and a hamburger, 47 cents. And I don't remember everything we got, but I remember the French fries. And if I had ever had a French fry prior to that, I don't remember, but I remember thinking, wow. Heavily salted, probably the wrong kind of salt, but were fried in beef tallow. Well, I became hooked on McDonald's French fries. And I remember, just remember, earlier in life, those of you who drank Coke, as I did occasionally as a teenager, there was a time when the flavor of Coke just went way down. All these Coke drinkers becoming Pepsi drinkers because something happened to Coke. They changed the formula. Now if you want a decent Coke, you got to get the Mexican Coke because it's with sugar and the original flavor formula. The thing is that there was a time when McDonald's fries just didn't taste the same as it did before. And that's in the 70s when they went to seed oils instead of, they got rid of the tallow and went to seed oils, and so most of the other people the same. Now a Steak and Shake coming out and announcing all our foods are now, or our shoestring potatoes are now fried in beef tallow. Hopefully the rest of them will get on board. I might have to start visiting those places once again. But for decades, the saturated fats like butter, like lard, like tallow, were said to cause heart disease. And of course, the people who were saying this was causing heart disease were various organizations like the American Heart Association and things like that, who were paid heavily by the seed oil industry to say that kind of stuff. And responding to the market for this, all these hydrogenated oils started to show up that are loaded with trans fats, giving rise to a whole bunch of, once you took the flavor of animal fats out of food and you put this trans fat, polyunsaturated crap in there, the taste was gone, so they had to load them up with sugar. And this is when you started noticing the sugar content increasing and increasing and increasing in foods, prepared foods, to make up for the lack of taste from the animal fats. So trans fats, we know now, is a major contributor to something that's called insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is probably affecting as much as 8 out of 10 Americans. If you see somebody, and you don't have to go very far to see it anymore, in a lot of homes, workplaces, at church, at the supermarkets, people who are probably a little bigger than they should be, they're probably insulin resistant. And insulin resistance simply is that your body is resisting the effect of insulin in the bloodstream to process the sugars, the glucose that's flowing through the blood. And because insulin's #1 job is fat storage, when your cells are not taking in the insulin or letting the insulin take in the sugar, insulin's building up in the bloodstream. And because there's a lot of that and you've got a lot of sugar because it can't get into the cell because of the resistance of the insulin, your body's converting that sugar to fat, body fat. It's very simple. There was an interesting analysis of more than 1,000 foods that were published by PLOS-1, P-L-O-S-1, O-N-E, in 2015 that ranked raw separated pork fat, also known as pork lard, as the 8th healthiest food out of a list of 100. That's 2015. Even more interesting, at the time of the publication, the media didn't pick up on that, didn't say anything about it, because the media is being paid by the seed oil industry to continue to promote seed oils as a healthy alternative to animal fats, because everybody knows that thrombus that's blocking the widowmaker artery in the coronary structure of your heart is loaded with bacon fat. Now, the late Fred Kumarol, author of Cholesterol is Not the Culprit, was the first researcher to note that trans fats, not saturated animal fat, is what clogs your arteries and promotes heart disease. How far do I want to go into this? Because we only got a few minutes left here. Unfortunately, instead of reverting back to healthy saturated fats, like once they realized the disastrous effect of seed oils on the coronary structure of the heart, the carotids, and other places in the body that has a tendency to deposit the effect of these trans fats, instead of reverting back to the natural fats, like before we had the heart disease, like lard, butter, coconut oil, they went through an even bigger promotion, trying to make trans fats look benign compared to a saturated animal fat. And it has taken a decade, maybe 2 decades now, since they started researching this, to realize how serious this has become. Now, there's a great book about fats by Nina Teichholz. I was listening to on NPR. I was listening to NPR one Saturday morning. Oh gosh, at least 10 years ago. And the local guy in the Salt Lake station, I forget his name, who interviews authors, was interviewing the investigative journalist Nina Teichholz, spelled Teichholz. Big, thick book on fats. One of the most concise, authoritative books I've ever read on fats. And she showed by graphs, by research, at the time all of the negative information came out about butter and coconut oil and egg yolk and lard and tallow and all these other things. The bad news came out about that. The public consumption of them dropped. In fact, in about 1920, the average butter consumption per adult per year was 18 pounds. By around 1950, late 50s, early 60, because of the bad press about butter consumption had dropped from 18 pounds per year to 4 pounds per year. At the same time, heart disease took off like a rocket. Well, we know it wasn't the animal fats. And then they started blaming it on all kinds of things. Well, you got to have the right kind of trans fat. And it's just silly how this spread. And fatty liver disease in people, fatty liver disease has usually been associated with alcoholics, because alcohol is a source of energy. You have proteins and you have fats and you have sugar as energy sources in the human body, but alcohol also. And it's interesting, the dry alcoholics, the people who are heavy candy eaters. You know the heavy candy eaters because they got a lot of belly fat. And they may never have had a sip of alcohol in their life, but they got an alcohol brewery fermentation plant taking place in their guts producing alcohol because of the yeast that's in there that gets the sugar that's deposited in the bloodstream, in the gut, making alcohol. And so we know now that about 30% of those who suffer from fatty liver disease never had a sip of alcohol in their life. And they're trying to figure out where all that's coming from, and they were pointing the finger at sugar. But now, rightly so, they're pointing the finger even more at seed oils. We were never intended to eat that stuff. Now, canola, the canola plant, I remember when I was on a train from King Station in London up to Edinburgh, just a rocket train shooting up the east coast of England. And there were a few fields we came across that were as yellow as the yellow brick road from Oz. Just as far as you could see, huge fields of yellow. And I kind of wondered what that was. And when the conductor came by, I pointed it out. I said, oh, that's canola. Wow. There are fields in Canada, the same thing. There are fields in the United States, but Canada is one of the largest producers of canola. And the canola plant itself produces very healthy omega-3 fatty acids. And I don't know that anybody is bothering to do it outside of the laboratory. Maybe there is. But if you extract cold process, like you would olive oil for extra virgin olive oil, cold process the oil in a canola plant, you're going to have a very healthy oil. The problem is, it's the processing of these oils where the danger comes in. A really good chef, when he is cooking, or she, just a real, one of their great dishes that they love to produce, that requires some frying. If it requires some deep frying, which occasionally happens, they like frying in canola oil or soybean oil because they're tasteless. The real value of the oil, one of the values of the oil is its taste, and you know it's been adulterated because it's tasteless, because of the extreme pressures, the extreme temperatures, the extreme filtration, the extreme bleaching that has been done to that original precious canola plant to produce canola oil that now is just trash and extremely dangerous to the human body. There are chefs that fry exclusively in butter or fry exclusively with beef tallow. Anybody that knows how to make good pastry knows that beef tallow in pastry just can't be beat. So what we had was this massive fraud pulled over the eyes of the public in order to push the seed oil industry. And as we were coming here at the top of the hour, I wanted to say a couple more things about, make sure, if you're going to, I started off here talking about lard. You want to make sure the lard is organic and it came from pastured animals. Now I need to take a look real quickly here at the radio station. And excuse me, but I need to check this out here to make sure that everything is okay, because we are coming to the top of the hour. And Paul, I might just made a big mistake. Hopefully not. I am going to go, because I am simulcasting here the radio station with the stream. I'm going to bypass. So I'll say this. For those of you on the radio, you are listening to K-Talk AM 1640 at Sandy, Salt Lake, Ogden, and Provo. There. So I did the station ID. All right, now I want to go on here and continue with lard. I also want to talk to you about butter And then I want to talk to you about this letter that Sally Fallon Morell wrote to President Putin that I think you will find very interesting, and then some things about extra virgin olive oil if I've got time to get to it. But a couple of things about lard, because La Hacienda makes their tortillas with lard. Now, pork is rich in the same monounsaturated fats that you have in avocados and olive oil. And I'm quoting here from the Healthy Home Economist about conventional pigs, the pigs that are raised in very, I don't know if inhumane is the right word, it doesn't promote good, healthy products. I'm quoting, raised on a diet of genetically modified corn and soy and sometimes peanuts, along with other low-quality calorie sources tainted with high amounts of glyphosate residue, antibiotic-laced feed, deworming drugs, and who knows what else. These pigs live in high-stress, downright hellish environments. These places appear to be the perfect home for antibiotic-resistant bacteria to thrive. Residues from the feed, drugs, and stress these animals receive end up in their meat and in their fat. Not surprisingly, the nutritional profile of the meat and fat from conventional pigs is poor. Tests from the Weston A. Price Foundation discovered that lard from pastured pigs, not the conventional now, the ones that were allowed to run loose, contain 10,000 IUs of vitamin D per tablespoon. This nutrient level is hundreds of times the amount in the USDA food database, which is based on conventionally raised hogs. Now, what you need to know about pork lard. When buying it, because you can go to this, the oil section of the supermarket where I shop at Harmon's because it's right next to where I live. They have ghee, Ghee. Organic ghee is another great, it's just butter that's kind of been rendered itself. The milk fats have been removed, but make sure it's organic. But then you'll see other kinds of fats, duck fat, goose fat. You want to make sure they're organic. But read the label closely, because when you're buying commercially available lard, you want to make sure it's not hydrogenated. You want to make sure that word does not occur in the label, because to try to get some shelf life, and lard has incredible shelf life in and of itself, a lot of times hydrogenated lard will contain up to about half a gram of trans fat per 13 grams of serving. And trans fats are the things that are the most deleterious in the way of fats to the lining of the arteries in your heart. And where's all that plaquing come from? This is a little aside, but I got to say it because I'm going to be asked this question. Cholesterol is a Band-Aid. Cholesterol is required by every cell inside the human body. It's what makes your body resistant to water. The skin cells are all wrapped in cholesterol. The cells of the rest of the body that want to keep things out and keep things in. The cell wall is made out of cholesterol. And if you don't have enough cholesterol in your diet, your liver's going to make it. Cholesterol is one of the biggest jokes out there in the healthcare world right now. But when we have too much sugar in our diet, we have too much insulin, where we lead to insulin resistance. Insulin should only be released for a short period of time following a diet essentially low in processed sugars, but there'll be some sugar, especially if there's going to be sugar in everything you eat that did not come from a face. And the milk of something that came from a face will have sugar in it. So it's hard to get away from sugar, which is why your body has the ability to produce and release insulin when necessary. But insulin should not be in the bloodstream all the time. So if you have a sugar-based breakfast, like breakfast cereal, and it doesn't have to be a sugar breakfast cereal, all breakfast cereals have sugar in it, and pasteurized milk, where the sugar and the lactose in the milk has been altered, so it's hard for your body to process it, which is why they have lactose-free milk. And you usually do not have lactose problems with raw milk. So there's sugar there, and then a mid-morning snack has got sugar, and then your lunch, if you're on the run, probably from a fast food place, so there's sugar in the bun, sugar in the sauces. And then later in the afternoon, maybe a soft drink or something, or some M&Ms, whatever, to keep you active and going. And then at dinner, there's going to be a lot of carbohydrates in the dinner for the average American, not necessarily you, but the average American. And there's just sugar, sugar, sugar all day long, and so the insulin levels stay high. Insulin is caustic to the linings of the arteries. It's an irritant. Due to the nature of insulin, it just happens to be an irritant. And the longer you irritate the walls of your blood vessels, the more your body's going to do something about that constant ongoing inflammation, such as laying down a Band-Aid when the lesions form. The Band-Aid it chooses to use is cholesterol. And it's going to mix with some calcium. Well, so that's why the plaquing that shows up in these arteries is full of cholesterol, full of calcium, and a few other things. It's not that your body's stupid and it doesn't know what to do in moments like this. The body's doing exactly what it's designed to do, to heal from the inside out the irritant that is taking place to the lining of the arteries, brought on by several things in our food supply, but not the least of which is elevated insulin levels that constantly irritate the lining of the arteries. When you take steps to stop elevated insulin levels by seriously cutting back on the amount of carbohydrates you consume, down to 60 grams a day or less, your body will start cleaning these things out. I mean, there's too many instances of people who are being warned of impending heart attacks and need bypass or at least a stent in the cardiac tree, in the heart, who choose not to, but choose to have a major lifestyle change. Within months to a year or two, the vessels are all clean and open again. Now, I've kind of gone back out in the weeds again. I must like the weeds. But a couple of more things here about the rise of pork lard. One of the things that was a big step away from healthy oils was the creation of Crisco. Crisco is made from hydrogenated cottonseed oil. And as I've always said on my radio program, we're designed to wear cotton, not eat it. So they take, and the story is, it's maybe not completely well known, but some enterprising entrepreneur delivering or buying a load of cotton from the local gin noticed these bags that were kind of wet and moist looking. Well, what's this stuff? Oh, they're seeds, cotton seeds. Well, other than planting cotton, what are you going to, well, we've got way too much, we've got way more than we need to plant cotton. We just destroy them. Do they have any other need? No, we don't. Well, why is it damp looking? Well, they're full of oil. There's oil in these seeds, cottonseed oil. Says the enterprising entrepreneur. Let me have a bag of those seeds. So the experimentation began. They could squeeze oil out of it. And I thought, it's like the fluoride that's in your drinking water is a byproduct of aluminum processing, the sodium fluoride that comes out of it. And instead of, getting rid of it and burying it in safe areas that can't leach into the water supply, someone came along and said, can't we make a product out of that and sell it to an unknowing public? And that's where cottonseed oil came from. And they were able, through the oil processing systems of bleaching and high pressure and high heat, make Crisco. Now, I have a brother-in-law who has a delicious recipe for chocolate chip cookies. And while I'm not particularly a fan of chocolate chip cookies, his are incredible. And most chocolate chip cookies are kind of flat, but his are puffy in the middle, and they're absolutely delicious. And I asked him one day, I said, why are your chocolate chip cookies so nice and puffy and everybody else is flat? He said, oh, that's the Crisco. Ah! I had no idea. I'd been eating his cookies for years. And since advertising claims back when Crisco came out were very unregulated, Procter & Gamble sold Crisco as being healthier than animal fats. And of course, if you tell somebody a lie long enough, they end up believing it. And it took 90 years before researchers finally discovered that this new better than animal fat compound, now known as trans fat, actually increases your chances of heart disease where animal fats do not. There was this 2012 NPR article that points out the way Crisco's success was paved by Upton Sinclair's book, The Jungle. I had to read that in the 11th grade. It was, it just really messed with our minds, our teenage minds. But I'm gonna, now The Jungle was technically fiction, but it's hard to forget the section on the men who cooked the lard. And they worked in tank rooms full of steam, and some of which were open vats near the level of the floor. And their particular trouble was that they would fall into the vats. And when they were fished out, there wasn't a whole lot left of them worth exhibiting. Sometimes the rats, I think I indicated the meat workers themselves, completely unrecognized by the time they'd been boiling in this fat for a while. So Sinclair's object was to gross people out with the meat industry. Now, unlike lard, Crisco was made in the lab by scientists, not necessarily an appetizing idea back then. The same thing as when I talk about synthetic vitamins. They're made in the laboratory by scientists. But people were already unqueasy about the meat industry back then anyway. They would have these cans back at the turn of the previous century. Begins with a P. Is it potted meat? Maybe it's potted meat I'm thinking of. Wasn't the most appetizing thing, and people weren't too wild about it at all. So Procter & Gamble had some work to do. And so they turned all this to their advantage. They launched this huge campaign that made people think about the horrible stories of adulterated lard coming out of these plants. And the ads touted how pure and wholesome Crisco was. And they packaged the product in white because it was bleached, and claimed they had slogans like, "The stomach welcomes Crisco." So they perfected the art of branding with Crisco, and they sent out cookbooks touting how good Crisco could make you feel. And they shipped samples of it to hospitals, they shipped it to schools, and they bragged about how the major hospitals in the country were using Crisco, some of the best educational institutions in the country were using Crisco. And then it went out into the newly invented radio waves, sponsoring cooking programs. Poor old rendered lard didn't have a chance. And so by the 1950s, when Ansel Keys came out and just promoted his vegetable oils over animal fats, in his landmark study that has since been ripped to pieces because it's just, when he came out talking about cholesterol, he picked countries that had high cholesterol rates because of dairy consumption, but left out all the countries that have low heart disease but high dairy intake. But that became the religion of the day. And so animal fats went out the window, vegetable fats, seed oil fats showed up. Now, aside from organic pastured pork lard, is there anything else that's healthy? Well, coconut oil. Coconut oil has the highest level of saturated fats of any naturally occurring food in Mother Nature. There is more, I think it's up to 80%. 80% of the fat in coconut oil is saturated fats. Far more, and in pork lard, saturated fat is less than 50, it's about 48%. In coconut oil, it's 80%. But we know it has a very positive effect. There's studies showing it has a very positive effect on the heart, and it's very antibacterial as well. And a great source of energy because of the medium chain fatty acids that are in there. Grass-fed butter, raw organic butter that's made from grass-pastured healthy cows, has all kinds of important nutrients, including vitamins A, D, E, and K2. It has minerals, has antioxidants. There's organic ghee that have been used for thousands of years, where you just take the butter that you've made from raw milk, so you have raw butter, you melt it down and you separate out the milk solids. This is why people who take the time when they make homemade organic popcorn with organic butter that they bought from the store, with good sea salt. Some of the most delicious popcorn I've ever made was organic popcorn in butter that just barely covered the top. The seeds were just one layer thick, barely covered the seeds in a big pan. And then pouring butter over it with sea salt when it's done. But butter that had the milk fat removed. And you do that by, you melt the butter. The milk fats are going to go to the bottom. The butter goes to the top. And you pour off the butter before the milk fat can come along. And if you put that butter over the popcorn, it tastes very much different than if you just pour melted butter all over it that's got the milk fats in there. Now, I just wanted to mention that because you can make your own ghee. There's a baking process that's done in the oven and a milk fat separation that's very easy to do. And there's all kinds of YouTube videos on this. If you want to improve the health of your family, this is one thing you might start doing. Oh, it's too much work. Well, then buy it. Buy it in the store, organic ghee. Or olive oil, which has all kinds of healthy fatty acids in it. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about next here, is to make sure, is to know whether or not you've got genuine olive oil or if you've got something being passed off as olive oil. Now, fake olive oil just abounds. I mean, it's important to take the time to investigate the sources. Let me pull up my source on that, and then I'll probably finish off the hour. I don't think I got time to get in butter. I want you to hear this letter that Sally Fallon Morell wrote to President Putin. So the best way, of course, as far as olive oil is concerned, to make sure, to tell if it's extra virgin olive oil, is the taste. It should bite the tongue. There should be a strong, pungent taste. And that's easy enough to do. You know, good luck trying to pull that off in a grocery store while you secretly open a bottle and taste it. You just can't do that at your leisure and start sampling. But there are some things that you should know. Now, Larry Olmsted, O-L-M-S-T-E-D, wrote the book Real Food, Fake Food. And he talks about a lot of things, but he talks about the fraud in the olive oil industry. And he says, how can you tell if olive oil is fake? It's a strong word, he says. I defined it in my book as whenever you get something other than what you think you're buying, which is what fake is. He says olive oil is simply the juice. My note just disappeared. Let me see here. My computer is really acting kind of goofy at the moment. Where did my note go? Anyway, I will have to do this on my own. If it doesn't say extra virgin olive oil, don't even bother messing with it. Then you need to read the label closely, because a lot of times, and the number one olive oil producer on the planet is Spain. And Spain ships a huge amount of its olive oil to Italy, where Italy will mix the Spanish olive oil with some of their olive oil and other oils. And if you see a bottle that says olive oil, but it's not extra virgin olive oil, it's probably got canola and soybean mixed in there with it. I'm just kind of simplify the whole thing here. That's one of the big tests. But the best test of all is it should be very, very green. It should have a strong pungent odor to it, and it should bite the tongue with its spicy flavor when you taste it. And the more pale looking, as opposed to a good color green, you're not getting the real thing. You're not getting the real McCoy. Now, extra virgin just simply means that it's just the first oil that's squeezed out of the olive in a cold processing without heat. And it's the first oil that comes out. Now, there's other oils that come out later. They are called olive oil because they came from an olive, but it's not that first squeeze, not the first processing. And olive oil, very strong in omega-9 fatty acids, very powerful monounsaturated fat that has all kinds of anti-inflammatory effects in the human body. And you can, if you do it at lower temperatures, you can cook. It takes a little bit longer, but you can fry with olive oil. The good thing about, this is another one of the bad things about seed oils. At the end of the day, if not more than once during the day, depending on how bad the fast food outlet is, this just came to mind, they will want to filter the oil that's in the fryer. So while the oil is still hot, the oil will come out of the bottom of the tank and go into a portable filter system that has paper and diatomaceous earth. And it will pump the oil, the entire container of oil in that fryer will have drained out and into this filtering system. Then they close the valve at the bottom of the fryer and pump the oil through this filter system back into the fryer once it passes through diatomaceous earth and the filter. The problem is, without throwing that oil out, which they eventually will do because it ends up producing byproduct chemicals in there that hurt the taste, if they don't do it on a very regular basis, it produces a greater portion of trans fats and more poisonous types of fats that seriously will harm the human body. Now, that's up to the manager of that restaurant to make sure that oil is turned over properly. Now, a lot of times you can go around the back door of these places, especially smaller restaurants, and see these barrels of oil waiting for some person that comes along, takes the oil and converts it to a form they can burn up in a catalytic engine, a regular piston-driven engine. That was a big fad about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, people converting their cars to burn processed vegetable oil. Robin says, my voice comes and goes like I'm walking out or away from. If I don't glue my mouth to the front of this microphone, which I'm not going to do, I guess it sounds like I'm coming and going. But if you will get on the stream, there's no problem with that. And how would you do that? You would go to, at YouTube, just go to youtube.com/@drjackstockwell, all one word. And at X, I think it's Forbidden Doctor. At X, you would go to x.com/Forbidden Doctor. And this show is, Sarah, you're welcome. Thank you for contacting me here. Thank you for talking about this. You're welcome, Sarah. I appreciate it. I hope it's okay if I use your name. You can get on at either X or YouTube and comment here. Not Scott, but anybody else. All right, I'm gonna jump in. I think I've said enough about the olive oil. It's just that there's fake olive oils, like there's fake anything else. There's fake olive oils. Be careful. Make sure it's extra virgin olive oil. It comes from a well-known company. And when you taste it, it just kind of bites your tongue with that pungent spiciness. And it's very green and has a strong pungent odor. Good. I like the smell of it. All right. Now, according to an article, and this is completely different, it's a message to Mr. Vladimir Putin and all other world leaders. And it's from Sally Fallon Morell at Nourishing Traditions. Another one of my great heroes. Many of you listening to me right now are familiar with her. And according to an article that was in the Washington Post last fall, I think it was, President Putin, as a president of Russia, is pleading with Russian women to have more babies. And he's pleading with them to forego their education in order to have their first child at age 18 and to give birth to very large families. And he's even revived the Mother Heroine Award for women who bear 10 children or more. Now, I'm going to read from her letter, and I have some comments to add. But she says here, she says, I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Putin. The birth rate in all Western countries is declining, particularly so in Russia. And no country can move forward when the young are taken care of an ever-expanding elder population, where they have to take care of an ever-expanding elder population, but urging women to have large families. Quote, many of our grandmothers and great-grandmothers had 7 or 8 children, maybe even more, Putin recently declared. She says that's not going to work simply because very few modern women are patriotic enough or healthy enough to have large families. In fact, she says, many women in Russia and in the West don't want to have any children at all. I know several childbearing age ladies that I take care of who have no children, have no intention of having children for one reason or another. She says the goal of every national leader should be to support women rather than to support couples to have healthy children. She says here in the United States, an estimated 1 child in 2 has health problems, from allergies to asthma to ADHD to autism. We also have an ever-increasing rate of infertility. There are many reasons for this, including environmental toxins such as fluoride, mercury, cadmium, xenoestrogens, and vaccinations, but the #1 reason we have a health crisis that threatens to drastically reduce the world's population is the substitution of industrial seed oils for animal fats, starting about 100 years ago and accelerating after the Second World War. She says seed oils are a slow toxin that interferes with hormone production, so much so that many young people today don't know which sex they belong to. And it reduces brain function, causes chronic disease, especially cancer, and over several generations, widespread infertility. We cannot make sex hormones without the nutrients found uniquely in animal fats, including hormones that support the desire to have children in the first place. She says, industrial seed oils have been foisted on the population by filthy capitalist swine, first in America, then the whole world, Russia included. Fast food, fried in toxic seed oils, is ubiquitous in Russia, and their supermarket shelves look just like ours. Then she talks about the 6 Western fast chain restaurants in Russia. In Russia, they have 917 Kentucky Fried Chickens, 735 McDonald's, 706 Burger King, 599 Subways, 204 Papa John's, and 203 Domino's. She says January 31st, 1990, the first McDonald's opened in Moscow. 51% of Russians' eating out spending goes to fast food chains. That's probably the same here. I'm just guessing, I don't know. She says 50% of the Russians who spend money eating out go to fast foods. She says 79%, and this is Deloitte, is the source of this, is Deloitte. 79% of Russians visit fast food cafes 5 times a month, with the average bill being about 800 rubles, which is equivalent to $12. She says only getting rid of seed oils will save us. In America, this will be a slow process, as those who use cooking oils and eat margarines and spreads and who consume processed foods loaded with seed oils will eventually die out, while the few families wise enough to use butter, lard, tallow, and poultry fat will survive and have healthy children. A process I call the selection of the wise. This could be accomplished much more quickly in Russia, Mr. Putin, because you have the power to get rid of these toxic oils. Start by forbidding their use in fried foods. Your people will not mind because food fried in tallow or lard tastes so much better. Have your bureaucracy gradually phase out their use in processed foods. Use stable palm oil or coconut oil and export all of your sunflower oil, one of the highest in unstable polyunsaturates, to your enemies. Pack up your Crisco. Oh, Paul, that's important. That just came in from Kristen. His volume is super low. I've turned the volumes all the way up on the on-air computer, and this is his level. You know, there might be a way around this, and that is to hook up. No, I believe you, Kristen. I believe you. I believe you. I just need to hook up a better microphone to my cell phone that goes to the radio station, and I know how to do it. I'm sorry. But I've been using my phone for over a year now instead of going to the radio station down in Linden. If it was up here, I'd go to the radio station. But my mornings are entirely too busy to take the half hour down and the half hour back. However, I think I have an answer. I think I have an answer for a much better AM 1640 broadcast signal or volume that I will incorporate by next Monday. Okay, back to Sally Fallon Morell's letter to President Putin about Putin wanting the Mother Heroine Award for getting Russian women to have 10 or more children. She says, yeah, I saw it, Paul. I see that. Okay, but I'm not on Zoom. I'm not on Zoom. And my webmaster, who's been monitoring this, has everything from my nothing but dead air for the last 20 minutes. Seriously? Well, once again, I'm going to put a pitch in here for the stream. For the health show, it's Breaking Health Barriers. That's the name of it. And if you go to YouTube, youtube.com/@drjackstockwell, all one word. And at X would be x.com/Forbidden Doctor. All right, let me finish here what I'm talking about in the half hour we have left, because this is really important. You're going to be hearing an awful lot more about seed oils, especially if RFK gets in. He said this is one of the first things he's going to do. And it's one of the reasons why the food industry is heavily lobbying against his appointment as head of Health and Human Services, because the food industry doesn't want to have to change to healthy oils. They would rather continue to push crap on an unsuspecting, unknowing American public. All right. So after she says, export all of your sunflower oil to your enemies, then institute a program, sunflower. Oh, I think I said cottonseed there at the end. Sunflower oil is one of the deadly eights. What do they call it? There's 8 particular oils. Canola and soybean being primary in there. Grapeseed and cottonseed. But sunflower is one of the oils highest in the unstable polyunsaturates. So she says, send this off to your enemies. Then institute a program of real science-based nutrition in your schools. Teach your young people, including the boys, how to have healthy children through a diet of nutrient-dense, traditional Russian foods that were rich in minerals and fat-soluble vitamins, not the food like substances of the degenerate West. And while you're at it, encourage the consumption of raw milk. And warn your people about the dangers of hormone-blocking statin drugs. Think of the legacy you would leave, Vladimir. Healthy Russian children, healthy, happy families. However, let me just add, dear Vlad, that age 18 is not the ideal age to start having babies. The best outcome occurs between ages 25 and 35. That gives young women time to get training or an education so that she has a profession. That's something I'm seeing a lot in the young ladies that I take care of who are not married, that seem very marriageable in that there's just an awful lot of great, wonderful characteristics about them, and they're in their late 20s, early 30s, and they're not married. Now, I certainly don't ask why, but occasionally during getting to know one better later on down the road, a year or two later, and the discussions come up, either there's poor pickings, very slim pickings for what they want, or they wanted to get a career first because of the high divorce rate and wanted to be able to support themselves in case of divorce and not have to rely on their husband. There's another reason to wait, and that is part of the problems with teenage pregnancies where the mother has not stopped growing herself. In other words, she has growth hormones of her own making in her bloodstream so that she continues to grow muscles, skeleton, organs, whatever else. And then she is pregnant. And then, of course, there's a tremendous amount of growth hormone that is released in the fetus. Coupled with her growth hormones, can cause some developmental problems in the developing baby. That's why I suggest that when I've been asked the question, when should we think about conceiving, not before 21. This lady is saying 25. Anyway, I'm not going to change the sexual habits of teenagers by saying this at all, or even young married people. but it doesn't hurt to wait a little bit longer till your body has stopped all its growth before you introduce another form of growth hormone. So she says, my father was a very wise man and said to myself and my sister many times, you must get an education and have a profession just like your brothers. You can't count on your husband being able to support you. You may get divorced or find out that he's a ne'er-do-well, or he may even die, and then you'll have to support your family. And you don't want your children to grow up poor. How much better for you to give to the women of Russia fatherly advice like this? Then she says, as for having very large families, wouldn't it be better to encourage Russian women to give birth to 3 or 4 healthy children, approximately between the age of 25 and 35, rather than suggest that women be saddled with large broods, each child less healthy than the last? This is why I love this lady. You see, in traditional cultures, it was considered shameful for a woman to have a child less than once every 3 years. This allowed the mother to recover her nutritional stores and ensure that her children, each of them, got the maternal attention they needed as an infant. It also ensured that each child was as healthy as the previous one, something that greatly reduces friction and jealousies among siblings, making family life a joy rather than a chore. Her letter goes on here a little bit longer. Modern science provides validation for these traditional practices. Close together pregnancies result in greater numbers of preterm births, more low birth weight, more maternal anemia, more emotional and physical strain, and higher likelihood of complications such as uterine rupture. These risks are highest if the interval between pregnancies is 6 months or less. Something bound to happen if mom is determined to have 8 or 10 children. She may even die of nutritional exhaustion, leaving her 8 to 10 children without a mother. Dear Vlad, I don't think this is what you want for Russia. If Russian women are inspired, not pressured, to have 3 or 4 well-spaced, healthy children before the age of 35, your population will increase soon enough. And this message is not just for you, Mr. Putin. It's for all world leaders. The greatest challenge in our modern world is the tanking fertility and the declining health of our children. Persuading or forcing women to have large families is not going to solve the problem. But teaching our children, our young people, the principles of healthy diets and the dangers of industrial seed oils and the ravages of vaccination and the importance of child spacing, only will this avert the crisis. Maybe Russia could lead the way. That is Sally Fallon Morell from the Weston A. Price Foundation and author of Nourishing Traditions. Wow, what a letter. I mean, that to me is really, really kind of, really impressive. All right, now we've got just a few minutes left here. And that, if you have listened to my radio programs long enough now, and in another month or so will be March, which will be the 30th anniversary, I started health shows at K-Talk Radio. Wow, 30 years. You know how I feel about butter. And I think I'm probably preaching to the choir to a large degree. But there are a couple of things here that I want to mention about it, taking us up to the end of the program. We got about 15 minutes left. And I don't know why I am not broadcasting at K-Talk. One person tells me that's been dead for the last 20 minutes, dead air. Nobody else is saying that. And I know what to do. I have a, and I should have thought of this sooner. I have a special kind of microphone that I can hook up, to my phone so that when I do K-Talk Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you'll get a much better signal. And I apologize. I should have thought of this sooner. This is still new territory for me. And I also wanted to go over the baking soda burp test again, because I did it at the beginning of the first hour, and I know there's people listening now that didn't hear it the first time, because this is, there isn't a day that goes by that there isn't some patient who asks me about indigestion. And I have a standard answer that I have hardly ever seen not work, unless you have an ulcer. If you got an ulcer, then I have an alternative for that. But this is it's a cute little test. It's really easy to do. First thing when you get it, this is to determine whether or not you have enough stomach acid, which is the primary cause of indigestion. Not too much acid, not enough. And it's very simple. Before you eat or drink anything else, you're going to have a 6 to 8 ounce glass of water and a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, and stir it up and drink it down. I know it tastes kind of funny, but drink it down. And here's simply the test. If in less than 2 minutes you burp, you have normal acidity. If it takes 2 to 5 minutes, it's anywhere from normal to low acidity. And if it takes more than 5 minutes, you have very low stomach acid. And so what happens when that sodium bicarbonate gets in there with that acid, it bubbles up and it forms carbon dioxide. And of course, that carbon dioxide's got to get out of there. Your stomach isn't made to handle gas. So that's where burping comes from. Burping can also come from the inability to process fats. And so that's the second half of my digestive aids that I recommend to people. Number one is Zypan, which greatly increases the acidic level of the stomach. And I use myself as an example during the beginning of the program. I have a bottle of Zypan sitting next to the sink in the kitchen where I live, and also sitting on my desk in my office because I'll have lunch at the office. And I will have anywhere from 2 to 4, usually about 4, because my big meal of the day is lunch. And I'll have 4 Zypan that I take right after the meal. And if there's any fat involved, and now that I'm eating an awful lot more animal products than I was before, I'll take a couple of cholacals, which are just freeze-dried bile salts. It's what comes out of my gallbladder, but it's bovine sourced, purified, and freeze-dried. And then I'll take the 4 Zypan and I'll take the 2 cholacol, and I will not have any distress, no acid indigestion, no burping, no discomfort, no bloating, and I can sail through the afternoon without any digestive discomfort at all. Who do I recommend this for? Anybody who feels like there's something wrong after they ate a meal. Bloating, flatulence, distension, uncomfortable. Usually it's because we're mixing foods that shouldn't be mixed. The meat and potatoes idea. Meat has a different digestive pathway than does potato. But when you eat them together and they're sitting there in the stomach, if you don't have enough acid to begin breaking down that meat, you're not going to be able to release pepsin from the stomach wall that further digests that protein structure into peptides and amino acids to get it out of the stomach. Food isn't supposed to be in the stomach more than a couple hours. And if it's there more than 2 hours, or you're feeling distension or something uncomfortable after 2 hours, then you have a sluggish digestion. So taking 4 Zypan, sometimes 1 or 2 is enough. For me, I like 4. 4 Zypan and 2 cholacol, and I sail through the afternoon. That Zypan, once it hits water, will break down into a form of acid. It's got betaine hydrochloride and a bunch of other stuff in there that's designed to teach the stomach how to produce more acid. Now, we know there are foods that will do that, especially apple cider vinegar. Some people, before they eat, will just take a glass of water with a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar and just shoot it down before they eat. That's a very powerful digestive aid because it has acetic acid in it. And that acid helps to break down the foods. But it also has a kind of a tonic effect on the stomach wall. to produce more acid. That's what's in these pills. Now, some people just don't want to drink a glass of water with a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in it. I don't blame you. So I don't say that Zypan is apple cider vinegar in a pill, but it's in the neighborhood. In fact, there's a lot more beneficial things in a Zypan pill than in apple cider vinegar, but then there's things in apple cider vinegar that's not in the Zypan pill. So you do what's comfortable and works for you. Now, I have a podcast at forbiddendoctor.com under education, where the podcasts are listed, entitled Digestion, the Beginning and End of Life. As long as you digest, you're going to live. When your digestion starts to get sluggish and it slows down, you're going to move towards dying, because your cells are going to start to starve. And your heart cells will starve, and your brain cells will starve, simply because you're not breaking down your food in a small enough form that can adequately be utilized by your basic physiology. Now, you know that everything that you eat and everything that you drink, except water, once it goes through the intestinal wall of the small intestine through the digestive processes, is going to go through the liver. Nature doesn't trust you to eat correctly, so we use the liver to filter everything we drink but water and everything we eat to go through the liver for final processing before it hits the bloodstream. But even as efficient as a very healthy liver might be in filtering what you eat as it goes through the bloodstream, or, the digestive, the metabolites and everything that's left over from the digestive process, your carbohydrates becoming glucose, your proteins becoming peptides down to amino acids, and your fats being emulsified, which simply means they're just made so much smaller and smaller and smaller, the globules, that they can mix with water, so that those fats can get into the bloodstream and to the cells for energy, or to the liver primarily. What's important is that the food you eat breaks those things down so efficiently and completely that if you spend $100 on really good quality food, you want to make sure you're getting the nutrients that's in that good quality food from proper, thorough digestion. That's where Zypan and Colocol comes in, both of which are at forbiddendoctor.com under standard process. That's the sale of these products is what keeps my door of my office open and keeps me on the air. So if you're going to get those things, it'd be nice if you got them from Forbidden Doctor. Also at forbiddendoctor.com is an explanation of who the Forbidden Doctor is. It is not me. If you haven't heard it, I think you might find it interesting. All right. Well, thank you, JK. I'm from Michigan. I use your products and listen to your radio shows. We love the live YouTube stream. So hi, JK. We could hear you fine on TV and phone. God bless you and your staff. Thank you very much. And Stephen, love it. Thanks, Dr. Captain Jack. Yeah, one of my favorite Billy Joel songs, actually. I used to use it as a bumper on my radio program when I had a daily show. Well, that's so nice. You can comment. You're commenting through YouTube. You can comment on YouTube. I think you can. And then Sarah coming through Facebook. Thank you for Facebook. Thank you, Sarah, for your comments earlier. The best thing you can do is to like and subscribe, and share this stuff. Share this with spread this stuff around to other people. Now, in the few minutes left, I am not going to stream the first 2 hours of my what would be the political show Monday and Tuesday. I will stream the second hour because there's just not enough people on a Monday or Tuesday morning listening to that to make it worth my time to do it. However, I do plan between now and then, because there's stuff flowing out of Washington and out of Moscow and out of Tel Aviv and London and Paris and Berlin on a daily basis, that I'm really going to try several smaller 15, 20-minute sections, and on health topics as well. Now, X is usually for silliness and political stuff. You don't see a lot of health stuff on X. I'm going to try to introduce a lot more health information on X, but Facebook as well. So this is whole new territory for me. And while I'm still going full speed seeing patients in the clinic, and I have a full schedule today, I've got a full schedule Friday. Tomorrow I don't see patients usually on Thursdays because I have a lot of paperwork to do as well as other errands to run, and I think I will be doing some shorts tomorrow of a political and health nature as well. But I really appreciate the comments that are coming in. That's really nice. It's very thoughtful of you. It makes this worthwhile. It helps me to know that I'm getting somewhere with this stuff, that it actually might be making a difference out there in some people's lives. Now, my health show last week was taken down by YouTube almost as fast as it went up, because one of the bots found a word in there that they didn't like, the V word. And one thing I want to point out, and I'm not going to mention the V word by word, but the FDA, in a minute or two that's left here, the FDA has mandated the warning of nerve damage with the RSV-V. And I think it's important that I am saying this on behalf of the FDA, not me, that I want my patients to be aware of the fact that if they decide to do this, that's their business, fine with me, that there is a warning about Guillain-Barré syndrome associated with these RSV compounds, Arexi and Brisvo, I think is how you pronounce them. And the FDA says they now have to have a warning stating a risk of Guillain-Barré syndrome. That came out from the FDA January 7th. This is not coming from me, it's coming from the FDA. And if the FDA thinks this is important, then it's important. Now, when I don't think I have enough time. My first introduction to Guillain-Barré was back when I was 18, working in a hospital as an orderly, starting my undergrad work. Very, very serious case. And the nurse, I asked, what is this stuff? Because the man was just paralyzed from head to foot. It was just terrible. And I said, what is it? What's his problem? Well, he has Guillain-Barré. I said, what's that? She told me. I said, where do you get it? How do you get it? She said, it's a particular drug you take in connection with preventing the flu, and I'm not going to say what that drug is, in hopes that this can stay up on the air. Anyway, K-Talk is going to go to news here in just a moment. I'm going to try to produce some shorts as far as health and politics are concerned between now and next Monday, but I will be back next Monday morning with a better microphone for the radio audience. And I have it. I just didn't think of using it. I thought my phone here would be enough. So keep your wits about you, and I will see you next week. And goodbye, one and all who were part of the